Hello. It is me, your Tru Heel Phenom SP3, back once again with the 3 count with SP3 for November 29th, 2019. Happy Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. I hope all of you had a great and blessed Thanksgiving. I hope you guys enjoyed the special Thanksgiving edition of the 3 count with SP3, but I'm right back at it. While you guys have been killing and murdering people for flat screen TVs, I've been hard at work and getting ready to give you more news. So on this edition of the 3 count with SP3, we'll be talking about Vince McMahon is very upset with the Survivor Series main event. We're going to be talking about the latest on the Corey Graves, Mauro Ranallo story that we've been talking about pretty much the whole week. And we're also going to be talking about a couple of AEW notes to end off the 3 count. So for November 29th, 2019, I am SP3 once again, and this is the 3 count. So for the first count, we got to talk about some news that have come out of the Wrestling Observer newsletter regarding the main event of Survivor Series. WWE Chairman Vince McMahon was apparently very upset with the main event to Survivor Series. It was the triple threat match, champion versus champion versus champion, with Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch going up against SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley, going up against NXT Women's Champion Shayna Baszler. The match was all about really promoting Shayna Baszler and setting her up for her main roster jump in 2020, but it did not go according to plan. A lot of very awkward spots and sloppy spots throughout the match. The crowd was pretty much dead for the entire duration of this main event matchup, and this apparently caused Vince McMahon to be extremely upset backstage in the locker room area. In the gorilla position, Vince McMahon was apparently furious, getting very upset with what was going on with the reaction that they were getting from the crowd, as well as a lot of the awkward, weird, sloppy moments that happened throughout this match. All 3 ladies are extremely talented. You have Becky Lynch, the Raw Women's Champion and face of WWE, the top woman in all of WWE. You have SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley, the only woman that's won the SmackDown, Raw, NXT, and Women's Tag Team Championships. This is a woman that has put on classic matches with Sasha Banks as well as Charlotte Flair. You have Shayna Baszler, who's been champion of NXT for over the NXT Women's Champion for over 400 days, the only 2-time NXT Women's Champion of all time, and the previous night before that had a great match in the first ever Women's War Games that she was the leader of Team Baszler up against Team Ripley. But these 3 ladies just did not have that great of a chemistry together in this triple threat match. I feel like it was a bad placement of the match as well, because it was toward the end of the night, and honestly, although the match had a great, pretty good build-up going into it, it was all about the matchup of Shayna Baszler versus Becky, with kind of Bayley being the third wheel of it all. But there was no hook for whoever won. It was just for the brand supremacy, 1. 2, the brand supremacy thing was pretty much over by then. The scoreboard read 3-2-1. So even if SmackDown, Bayley won that match, they would have tied NXT. They wouldn't have beaten NXT. So no one would have won Survivor Series. So it kind of telegraphed what was going to happen. That Shayna Baszler basically had to win, or that Becky was going to win, so Raw and SmackDown could finish with 2 points. But no matter what, NXT was going to win the Survivor Series. So there was nothing on the line. Not even the brand supremacy was really on the line going into this match. And by putting it in the main event, it made a lot of fans think that let's say this properly. I know this is the first time on the 3 count with SP3. You probably, if you haven't seen Tru Heel Heat, you don't know, but I'll tell you. It caused everyone and their mama, including your Tru Heel Phenom SP3, to think our Lord and Savior, UFC Hall of Famer, the baddest woman on the planet, Ronda Rousey, was going to return to the WWE. Even though A couple of weeks ago on Total Divas on the E! Network, she officially announced that she had retired from the WWE. Putting them in the main event just set up a lot of expectations that people thought Ronda would return, and that was the whole reason this match was in the main event. But no, that's not how it turned out. It turns out that this was the main event, that the whole idea and the plan for it was to set up Shayna Baszler for her main roster jump and to groom her for the one-on-one matchup with Becky Lynch. Because if you've seen the last couple of months, ever since really Becky Lynch has became the Raw Women's Champion and SmackDown Women's Champion, all the way back at WrestleMania in April, Becky has been begging for credible challenges, begging for credible feuds. She started off her whole run with that awful feud with Lacey Evans, as well as versus Charlotte Flair, who we've seen her verse enough times. Please, dear God, I don't need to see any more Charlotte and Becky match. Even though every time they have a match, it's good to great, I don't need to see it anymore. They have become the Randy Orton and John Cena of the women's division in my eyes. But she had a pretty good feud, in my opinion, with Sasha Banks this year. But other than the Sasha Banks feud, it's been few and far between on credible feuds. She had a decent build up to with Natalya going into SummerSlam, but outside of the Sasha Banks rivalry, she's lacked incredible challengers, incredible rivalries for her title reign. And Shayna Baszler is a much needed person to feud with Becky Lynch. She's a credible heel that has been built up excellently on NXT with the two horsewomen. The MMA horsewomen versus the four horsewomen of NXT has been a match talked about for years, but Becky versus Shayna has only come to light in the last couple of months, but it's something that I've talked about. I thought that should have been the plan coming out of WrestleMania, that Becky wins the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania, and that you had called up Shayna by then to feud with Becky on the main roster. These things did not come to pass. It's helped Shayna establish herself as one of the most dominant NXT Women's Champions in its history, and one of the most dominant women's champions of the modern era, the only two-time NXT Women's Champion in history. So Shayna Baszler is being groomed perfectly, but the fact that Vince McMahon was furious, I'm not surprised. That matchup did not go on as planned. The crowd did not react to it. Another story, a report that came out during him being furious backstage, is that he was apparently talking to the referee on high spots for the superstars to perform in the match. Since then, representatives of the WWE has reached out to Wrestling Observer and said that yes, Vince was upset and he had every right to be, but no, they are not sure if he was telling high spots to the referee to give to the superstars to perform during the matchup. But it is very telling that Vince McMahon was upset with this. This is when he's upset with something, it leads to further consequences down the line. So it's something to keep our eye on. Has it ruined the potential call-up and push for Shayna Baszler when she comes to the main roster? We got to stay tuned right here on the 3 count. I will keep you guys updated. So for the 2nd count, we got to get into the latest, unfortunately, about this sad story about Mauro Ranallo and Corey Graves. Wrestling Observer newsletter has come out with more information about Mauro Ranallo and the Corey Graves story. So it even gives us information about Mauro Ranallo's exit from WWE back in 2017. Apparently, the story that first came out had to do with JBL and his public bragging on Mauro Ranallo on national TV on the SmackDown telecast, which led to Mauro leaving because of his mental illness issues. No, it came out that the hierarchy or higher ups of the WWE are the reason and the toxic behavior that Mauro was receiving during his time on the WWE SmackDown roster. So Mauro, when he came to an agreement with WWE, he came out publicly and absolved JBL of any of the blame that he was supposed to get. And Wrestling Observer newsletter also reports that Mauro and JBL have worked together since Mauro reached that agreement back in 2017 and started working with NXT. Him and JBL have worked together since then. And JBL, I have to hand it to you, he actually made amends with Ranallo and actually helped smooth out that relationship. But now with this whole Corey Graves thing, it's just kind of sad and kind of get you upset if you really care about Mauro Ranallo, because apparently the WWE views Corey Graves as the victim in this situation, or as a victim of circumstances. Pretty much, they basically are saying that they believe the whole Corey Graves explanation that it was just to stir up controversy and have a conversation point when they did the Survivor Series telecast, like we previously reported on the 3 count. But honestly, I told you guys I was skeptical about that explanation and about Corey Graves' apology. A lot of people agree with me in the backstage area. They feel like it's a WWE spin job. This whole, he was just trying to create controversy and create a talking point. It's just, you don't do this type of stuff. You don't. To be fair to Corey Graves, he did not know of Mauro Ranallo's current mental health issues, because Mauro was already dealing with issues before Corey Graves' tweet came out. But this tweet has just caused him to just be away. WWE was not notified that Mauro Ranallo would not be on the NXT telecast until about a day or so before. Frank Shamrock, who is the manager of Mauro Ranallo, has received an apology from Corey Graves, but as of this report right here on November 29th, we have not getting confirmation that Corey Graves has reached out to Mauro Ranallo in regards of an apology or just rectifying the situation. Mauro Ranallo was not aware of Corey Graves' intention to stir up controversy for the Survivor Series telecast and to build up the brand warfare storyline. He was not even informed of that until Corey Graves went out on his podcast just a few days ago and let it be known that that was his reasoning for that. I just gotta report this. I'm trying really, really hard not to give too much of my opinion on it, but I just want you guys to know like what the facts are. But I'm very much disappointed in Corey Graves, but I'm not at all surprised by the behavior of the WWE. The WWE is known for this toxic environment, and the fact that they view Corey Graves as the victim of all of this just further makes my point about the toxic environment that is the WWE backstage. Behind the scenes, it's not always cherries. It's not always stars and smiles backstage. It's a very toxic environment, and if you're not used to it, you're gonna get burned. And that's what I feel like Mauro Ranallo is just getting burned by it. And I don't feel like it's the right place for him to be with how fragile he is with his mental health issue. I don't want to use the word fragile, but the seriousness or the complexity of his emotions and the ability of him to control those emotions and those emotions to go from the extremes of it all, it's just not the best environment for him being in WWE. He's been away from a lot of the toxic environment that he was a part of with the SmackDown, because he's only been dealing with Triple H and Michael Cole, the two people responsible for bringing him into the WWE on the NXT brand. But it's just very, very sad that he has experienced this again. My thoughts and my prayers are with Mauro. I hope that he's able to recover from this, and I hope that he does return to NXT, because he is a key component and he's probably one of the most important people for NXT. He is the voice of NXT, and he brings a whole different type of vibe to it, and a whole different vibe that I've enjoyed. And 2018, I've always said, I'll say it again right here on the 3 count, is the greatest year ever of NXT, and Mauro Ranallo was the voice for all of it. So, and 2019 looks like it's the second greatest year in NXT history. It got on USA. It's had a whole bunch of great takeover events, as well as classic matches in 2019. So I want it to continue for NXT, and I want Mauro to continue on NXT, but I'm just skeptical of if WWE is ever going to be the right place for him. And finally, for our 3rd count, we got AEW notes. Our AEW notes is about, first of all, about Kris Statlander. Kris Statlander made her official AEW Dynamite debut this past Wednesday with the show at the Sears Center in Chicago. teaming up with Hikaru Shida to verse Emi Sakura as well as B Priestley in a tag team match. Kris Statlander did take the pinfall loss from Sakura, but Kris Statlander is a young lady with a lot of potential. She's a young lady that is viewed as one of the top prospects in all of women's wrestling, and apparently WWE had their eye on her. They had her paid to go to the NXT brand and start up at the PC in January before AEW started booking her for the AEW Dark events over the last couple of weeks, as well as this week's Dynamite. And now it seems that AEW is now at the front of the line to sign Kris Statlander, and this would be a huge cue for All Elite Wrestling. Honestly, Kris Statlander, I feel, is one of the top prospects, especially when it comes to American ladies out there. There are not many that have as much potential and are as young as Kris Statlander. I believe she is about 22, 23 years old. She is someone that Dustin Rhodes, a veteran of 20, 30 years of the business, is very high on. So I know that he's going to be working with her very hard to keep her up to stat, but I feel like she's a key component and that could elevate the AEW women's division that has been probably the low point of All Elite Wrestling, probably the point of that most fans and most haters of AEW can point at and say that the place they need the most work on is the women's division. Kris Statlander would be someone that helps that a lot, in my opinion. She's got a cool look. The whole the galaxy's greatest alien gimmick is very cool. It's very unique. It is not something that we see every day, and she adds a lot to All Elite Wrestling. So I'm hoping that they can lock her down, and this would be a huge coup to get her underneath the WWE when they were planning to get her started in January. And our final AEW note has to do with the Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega match back at AEW Full Gear on November 9th in Baltimore. Apparently, the Maryland State Athletic Commission is actually investigating this match. It was the former WCW announcer Chris Cruz who contacted the Maryland State Athletic Commission asking about what are their policies as far as like blading and bleeding in wrestling matches. The Maryland State Athletic Commission said that they strictly prohibit wrestlers to do blading or continue wrestling after bleeding during matches, and that they had been currently investigating the lights out match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley from AEW Full Gear on November 9th. This is very interesting. This is something that another story that we're going to have to continue on and see what the outcome is. But the fact that they probably are against a lot of the state athletic commission rules kind of makes me feel like All Elite Wrestling didn't really think this one through. If they come back on the back end and are penalized for this from the Maryland State Athletic Commission, or they can't book another show in Baltimore, Maryland, this is something that's going to come back to haunt them. The lights out match is probably the most polarizing match of all of 2019. So if you haven't seen it already, I feel like it is your privilege, it is your right as a professional wrestling fan to go out your way and see it and form your own opinion on it. Some people hate it and feel like it was disgusting. It wasn't wrestling. It was just the purest form of garbage wrestling that there is. And some people who felt that it was a 5-star classic and one of the greatest hardcore matches that they ever seen. But the fact that the State Athletic Commission of Maryland is taking a look at it, I think their opinion of this match is the most important. AEW, good luck and Godspeed. So that is the 3 count with SP3 for November 29, 2019. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please put a comment down below to talk about this McMahon being furious with the Survivor Series main event, or the latest on this Mauro Ranallo-Corey Gray story that is sure to continue on, or any of our AEW notes that we went over on this 3 count with SP3. Push that subscribe button right now and stay tuned for all of the content right here on Tru Heel Heat. More from the 3 count with SP3 3 times a week. So this has been the 3rd edition for this week. So I'll be back with you guys the next week. On Monday, I'll be filming another edition of the 3 Count with SP3. You got a lot to stay tuned into this weekend on the Tru Heel Heat YouTube channel. We still got our Survivor Series review, courtesy of Drunk Guy JJ. A new edition, the second episode of Going Raw with Drunk Guy JJ still to come. Nest XT's second edition will be covering this week's edition of NXT. It's either going to be myself or my good friends Jimmy Macaram and Marcus Cash giving you the AEW Dynamite review this week over the weekend. And of course, you got SmackDown with the Lynches. And last but certainly not least, the Romeo Report with Romeo Cologne this coming Sunday. The second edition is coming up. So you got the family as SmackDown with the Lynches. You got the Drunk Guy going Raw and his Survivor Series review. Nest is gonna break down all the action from NXT this week. Myself or the Macaram and Cash will be giving you the AEW Dynamite review this week. And Romeo, I'm just going to read the bottom line because I'm not going to listen to you because your news reporting is not as skilled and detailed as mine. Yes, I'm calling you out. But that has been the 3 Count with SP3 for November 29th, 2019. Like I said before, place a comment down below and discuss this news. Like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, feel the heat, and we'll see you next time right here on the Tru Heel Heat YouTube channel.